counting all frames. By this we mean, so if you have a number of images you want to count, there's a couple of ways of doing that in Image Pro. One of the typical ways is, we set up a macro, how to do a batch process and counting all the images. Another way of doing that, of counting all frames, is you can take a series of images and make them into a sequence, or maybe you have a time-lapse sequence and you want to count the number of objects, the number of cells, the number of particles within all of those frames. So this is a slightly different way of doing it. We made some changes in Image Pro 10 that I'll just give a little reminder of, but this is a way of putting the images together, typically in a sequence. They could just be a series of images that are taken together, or it could be a time lapse. Doesn't matter. It's going to be the same technique, and then we're going to be able to count those all at once and generate the data. So now let's talk about two things, and we'll do a live demo also. So it's a similar workflow to what you've been doing all along within Image Pro. You have an image, you have a sample image that you're going to count. You set up the counting routine, the analysis procedure. I'm going to just do a simple count size today, counting the number of particles, in this case droplets. But you set up your counting routine. Once you've done that, save your measurement options file and how you want to count your sample. And then what we're going to do is open or create an image sequence so we can count all frames. We'll load measurement options. We'll go into the feature that we added in Image Pro 10, the collect button that is in every place in Image Pro that we have our counting or analysis feature. In count size, there's one. Motion tracking, there's one. In manual measurements, there's one. There's also one in the image histogram, and there's a few others. But any place that we're actually generating data, we will have that count button. You'll see this live again as a reminder. From there, we'll set up the preferences about how you want to collect the data, and then we'll collect, and we'll go through and automatically analyze all of the images. So it's a way of doing batch processing in a slightly different way, but can really simplify it if you just have the image sequence, apply a count, generate the data. So there's two key options here. This is the drop-down. I'm going to use the count size today as an example, but there's two fundamental options for counting all frames. This is the collect button in the count size ribbon, and during the drop-down, you'll see the preferences. All frames, this means when I press the collect button, it will count each and every frame. If this is off, it will only count the active frame or the active image. Clear collector. This is clearing the data collector if there's any previous data in there. So you're always starting with a clean set of data, so you don't have any carryover from the previous experiment. Here's the key, clear measurements, because there are two primary options. If I want to collect all the raw data using how I have my measurement types, image name or object name, the area of it, diameters, any of those parameters that you set up to count the particles or the cells or whatever it may be that you're counting. With this on, this will sync to that. It always does a live resync every time I go and count. So it's pulling in active measurement types. That's what this means when this is on. There's a little description. There's a tooltip for each of these. An option, then show the data table. So this is the first part. If I just want to count all the images, get all the raw data, this will be on, because it will always sync to what the measurement types are live. The other option is, what if I don't care about all the raw data from those 100 frames I want to count? I just want to get the statistical information for each and every frame, for example. In this case, we can load a data collector table, and then with this clear measurements off, it will not do a live sync. It will basically base all the analysis on that data collector table. And for anyone who's gone through that Image Pro training class, this is how we would set up a batch process. I don't care about each and every little, whether it's tissue, whether it's particle, whether it's, counting droplets, whatever it may be. I don't care about all the raw data. I just want to know the statistical information. So this is the way we'll use it to set up collecting specific statistics. And this will be off. Again, I'm going to go through this live so you can see it in both fashions. Again, this is primarily the same workflow that we've done. One important thing, once we have this set up and you're ready to go, you'll simply press the count button or the collect button. Either one is the same. You collect here. It's just how you have the preferences set. One important thing to note, since we added data collector, the right title is collect measurements to data collector, this feature, use the one that's specific for the analysis tool. Don't use the data collector in the review tab or the review ribbon. Use the one that's specific, and that's what this means. We're going to use count size today, so we'll use that collect. All right. So how do we use the current measurement types or the current measurement parameters that you want to collect? I'm going to go through this, just talk through it first, and then I'm going to do a live demo. So same workflow that you always do. Here I'm going to open or create an image sequence, load my measurement options. I'm going to set my preferences. In this case, I want to count all the frames in the sequence. I will make sure I don't carry any over or carry over any old data that may be in data collector. So I'm starting fresh. Clear measurements. This means I want to sync and pull in whatever measurement options I have and whatever measurement parameters I have. And then I'm going to show the data table when I'm done. These two, all frames and clear measurements under this type of counting have to be on. Other preferences, set as you need them. Just as a reminder, let's go to data collector. In this case, we don't need that. We're going to do everything right from here. So when we're ready, we'll press the collect button, and we'll generate data. Again, this is an example, raw data, just some data table. I'm going to show basically 12 images that I built into a sequence and how it's going to analyze all that data. So instead of having to set up a macro, setting a batch process, this is a very simple way to analyze a whole series of images in a very straightforward fashion. So let's go live for a second. And let me pull up my Image Pro. All right. So just to remind everyone, I'm just going to open a single image here, one of these. And what I've done is set up a measurement options. How do I want to segment it? Do I want to do object splitting? What measurement parameters? So let me just open that file quickly. I call it droplets. This is my measurement options file. And that's my sequence. I have object splitting on. In this case, I'm only going to collect a few parameters. Object class name, what I've called it when I segment it, the area, and the aspect ratio. The sample here is wetting paper that you can put it into a field, and if someone's doing an aerial spray, the droplets that land will hit the wetting paper, and they can actually look at a distribution analysis. But this is, we'll put out these papers, or if you're doing some other type of spraying operation, this is a way of looking at how well the distribution is occurring, or how well the dispersal of any type of agriculture, in this case an agricultural product, is being spread. Again, this is used in a lot of other fashions. There's also food gums that can be used when you use this wetting paper. They use it in quite a number of different scenarios. But the idea is I want to count the drops. All right, and my measurement options file, I can always confirm, set that up. Perfect. I've counted 329 objects. And then, again, this is going back, how do I set up my measurements? And I want to save that measurement options file. Standard, straightforward Image Pro. So in this case now, I have all my preliminary work set up. So now let's open the sequence. So I'm going to open my images. I have 12 of them. I'm going to select them all. As a reminder, I can open these as a sequence. So I'll put all these images together, put them into a sequence, press open. It's now put into a sequence that I can play through. That was a little fast. As you notice, some of these images, they have some black lines on the side, so I have clean borders set on. So let's start. First step, in this case, I know how I want to count my image. I'm going to load my measurement options file. And then I'm going to set my preferences for the collect. This is the collect tool, collect measurements. It's going to send it right to data collector. And because I already have measurement parameters set up that I want to collect, I'm going to set all frames. I want to get rid of any data that was previously there. And here I want to make sure I'm doing this active sync, so I'm going to pull in those list of parameters. And this is what this is telling me. And all I have to do, I can press this collect here, or I can press it here, it doesn't matter. And ImagePro will go through, count each and every frame automatically, and generate the data. So now in standard data collector without any modification, here's the active frame number. And then here, for each and every droplet that I've measured, it's counted all of those frames. And you can scroll through. This is a data collector. There's no active link between the image and the data. Now, one important thing. This is showing the last frame that's counted. If you ever want to verify to make sure that it's absolutely counted, besides looking at the data here, one of the nice things that you can do in ImagePro, you can see it's just showing the overlay over this. But what I can do is, since I'm in count size, I can generate a mask. So I can mask all frames. And you can see it iterating through the sequence, and now I can see what I segmented in each and every frame. There's some more advanced things that you can do in ImagePro by actually then using the masked image, but this is kind of a nice way to verify that. Okay, yep, this is what I've counted in each and every frame. Again, I could put these two images side by side and play through them. Okay, so now, what else do we have? We can do a slightly different operation. In this case, let me call up. Using a data collector file. As I mentioned, maybe I'm not interested in all of the raw data. I don't want to know the 30,000 or 20,000 objects. I don't care about that. I just want to know the statistical information. One way is if I have all the raw data and want to look at the overall stats in that data collector table, let me just go back, or data collector table, since I have all the raw data there, I can use this statistics button here. That will give me the overall statistics for all of the objects. If I want to know the statistics per image, for example, then we're going to set up the collect in a slightly different fashion. So in this case, I want to go to Data Collector. This tool, Data Collector, resides in the Review ribbon. There's a shortcut under the Collect button where I can go right to the Review Review ribbon or tab. In this case, I want to set up a specific Data Collector table to collect only statistical information in this case. I don't care about the raw data. I just want to know, for example, how many objects there were per image. In this case, I can set up the mean area of each object, standard deviation, and maybe, since I selected aspect ratio, get the mean aspect ratio. Again, it's a similar exercise that we've set up in batch processing, but this is a shortcut way of doing it when it's appropriate. So in this case, I want to set up this data collector, data collector table. Here I'm using measurement stats. I only have one type of object, so I'm setting up my measurement statistics. I'm going to save my data table. And then before I run my analysis, I want to make sure I have the correct table loaded. So the first step is setting up this data table. This can be done when we're setting up how do you want to count the image and the objects, or percent area stain, whatever it is you're counting. Now in this case, we go through the same order of operations with one small change. We're going to open our image sequence. We're going to load our measurement options. And now the collect options are going to be slightly different. So now I'm back in count size. So I'm going to do a count operation, count the number of droplets. And so in this case, I want to make sure I have all frames set. I don't want any old data. And if you remember, I left some old data there. But now I want to make sure I don't resync. I don't want clear measurements. It's going to use whatever's set by data collector. So now I'm going to use that data collector table. And I'm going to show the data when it's done. And when I'm ready, collect. At the end of the day, this should look like a familiar table. So for each image, I've now gotten statistical information, how many objects per image, the mean of those droplets, standard deviation, and also the mean aspect ratio. Let's go take a look at Image Pro. So in this case, I've already cleared all the, go back to the beginning, there's no count, everything's clean. If I want to, I'm just going to reload my droplets. And I've already set up the data collector table, so let me show that. I'm just going to go to the shortcut, go to data collector. This takes me right, it's a shortcut to the review. I'll leave that data in for now, it doesn't really matter. But the key is I want to load the right data table. So in this case, I've set up a data collector table. Let's see. Just it, droplet stats. And this is the one I showed in the PowerPoint. That's up to collect specific information, statistical information from each frame in essence. And I've turned off, I don't want all the raw data. I don't care about it in this case. I could, if I want all the raw data from all the images, have these turned on. So at this point, let me go back to count size. I've loaded my measurement options. I need to set my collect preferences. In this case, I want to count all frames. I don't want to count any depth, but I don't want to resync. I want to use that table. Now all I have to do is go. This time, I've now used the data collector table file to collect very specific information. So if I didn't care about all the relevant data, it's not relevant to my particular experiment, this time my particular analysis. I just want to know the statistical information for each frame. And now I can count the number of objects per frame. In this case, I selected the mean size, standard deviation, and the mean aspect ratio. So again, normally this is something you would set up in batch processing, you'd write a macro for. This is a simple shortcut. By setting Image Pro up in a specific counting way to count a series of images. So if you need to count 10 frames, 1,000 frames, this is also a good alternative and a nice way to do it. So let me touch one more thing quickly. Just as a reminder, ROI counting. Traditional region of interest counting in Image Pro is you would define a series of ROIs. Here I just put a grid there as ROIs, but I have 3 separate regions that I want to count in. And when you count, you have ROIs on the image. It will count the data in each ROI, but it will combine it all as one table. It's not keeping them separate. So for example, if you have something where you have some manufactured part and you need to put specific ROIs, then count maybe failures in each of these locations, or maybe the number of composite material particles, whatever it may be. But I need to keep that data separate. I need to keep it by each ROI as a parent. In this case, in Image Pro 10, or Image Pro, we've introduced a slightly different feature under Count. It's called Count by ROI. So in this case, you draw your ROIs on the image, set up your counting protocol, and instead of selecting count, you select count by ROI. So what this does is it looks at these 3 regions and it keeps the data independent per region. So it sets it up as a parent-child. So now for each region that I've counted in, I can get that information for each region and then get the counts within those regions. So if you're looking at some tissue and you're doing a cell count in maybe different regions of tissue, you need to draw ROIs, you can do that and it'll keep that data per location instead of combining it all into one. This is a pretty powerful tool when you need to do this. You're doing some type of semiconductor analysis, failure analysis, a great way of keeping it separate. Count by ROI.